You're listening to the Race to Racer podcast presented by Race 92, special edition 2022 Indy 500 recap show featuring former voice of the Indianapolis 500, Paul Page. Paul, it's always an absolute honor to have you on. And, you know, we really appreciate you always taking time. I know there's probably a million other things you could be doing, and we always appreciate you.
I love you guys. This is a good thing.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Got it.
So it was, it was a pretty good month. And I know for you, kind of something that probably should have happened a while ago. You were inducted into the IMS Hall of Fame.
Yes, I was. And that I was a little choked up at the end of the speech, but I thanked everybody, thanked my family, and I can't believe that I'm part of that. You know, I look at the other names on the list, but I'm very thankful that they considered me and decided that that would be something they would do. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you were actually part of the 2021 class, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Of course, they didn't have the Hall of Fame banquet in 2021, and so they bumped it to this year. And physically present were just Wally Dolly, Back, and I. Other receptees, I think, will get honored in the future whenever it works out. I'm not sure how that works. I just know I was there with my whole family.
Absolutely. So I guess when you kind of look back at all the awards you've gotten, so you've actually gotten Emmys before, right?
Yeah, I have two of them for the Indy 500 as the best sports special. So yeah, that's a team thing though. It's not just me alone, it's everybody. But I keep one here.
That's really cool. Well, so when you kind of look back at the month, obviously, I guess what did you kind of take away from the race, or what? And were you actually on? So I thought someone said that you actually went on the radio network a little bit.
Yeah, I'm on the radio network every year before the race, and maybe twice before the green flag, and then something around the middle of the race. But if I have something special, Mark James, the voice, will let me in. But I'm scheduled to do the middle of the race and then thoughts at the end of the race as well. So it's nice that they keep thinking of me. It's really nice of them.
Oh, absolutely. And I actually got to spend a little bit of time with Mark on one of the practice
He's a good
days.
guy, isn't he?
Yeah, I got to go up to the booth for like 30 minutes. And I tell you what, it definitely gives me a lot more respect for those guys, because there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that the regular listener doesn't think about.
Yeah, and the thing about the behind the scenes is when it's all working fine, it's terrific. But, every now and then, well, almost every 500, there is some sort of technical issue. It may only be for a few minutes or something, but the whole team is ready to work around that should need be, and they do a great job.
Oh, absolutely.
I know for me, I'm sorry. I know for me, this year is probably, I don't know. I haven't listened to the radio broadcast because I've been at the race and I haven't taken anything. And this year I actually plan on doing it, and I forgot to bring my headphones. But I will tell you that I've really, after doing it for a few years without listening to the radio broadcast, I think from now on, I'm always going to listen to the broadcast at the track as well.
Radio is the only way to watch the race. How about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's just the best way.
I just made that one up.
I love it. I love it. Aaron, write that down. You got to write that down, Aaron.
I like it. I really do like that. And I did the same thing. So I have a scanner, and I actually listened to the radio network during the race from the third turn.
That's great. That's really good.
And there's a reason why the radio network, I know they've gotten awards for sports radio for a while now, and it's definitely well deserved, and they all do a very good job for sure. So do you actually you actually watch a race up there with the radio guys the whole
I watch the start from up there. And maybe to the first pit stop, but more often than not, no. This year I happened to wait through the first pit stop because I wanted to see if one of my predictions was correct, and it was, which was the 30th lap being the key lap to make a stop, 30th or later, so you can reduce the number of potential pit stops throughout the race. So I stuck around to see whether I was right or wrong or what, and that one saved me. So I actually said something earlier, though, it was really stupid. I don't know. I use the internet sometime for statistics and stuff, and I had pulled up a statistic on Al Unser that gave me to believe that he could not surpass, or that Dixon could not surpass Al during that race. And I said that. And fortunately, Mark James and the gang saved me. But you try to do good research, and every now and then you get tripped up on something like that. So I apologize.
I had no idea he was that close. I
Yeah, I
hadn't
didn't
looked at
either.
that chart for a while, and when they were talking about that during the race, I mean, that's a staggering thought to think that Scott
It is.
Dixon's led the race that much and has only won it once.
Yeah, exactly.
amazing.
Exactly. He's a spectacular driver, though. He's going to win again, if not a couple agains. He's had just such rotten luck past several years. So yeah,
I couldn't believe it. And I stood there and I watched him when he peeled off. I thought, man, he's hot.
mm-hmm. And he was.
And he was. And then I thought, well, he knows his car. Mm-hmm. And then right at the line, the thing, he's really hard on the brakes because it steps out on him a little bit.
Right.
And I said to the guy who was standing next to me, who was listening to the radio broadcast, I said, did he speed? Are they giving him a penalty? And he said a few moments later, he said, yeah. He said that he's getting the speeding penalty. I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah, well, you can see a puff of the rears just before the line, that there's some braking going on there. Interesting to me only in the fact that it was the rears and not the fronts, but maybe we just couldn't see the fronts either. And so that's the reason he gives, and that's probably the reason. But I have noticed that it's kind of become a thing lately on pit stops to put your pit limiter on as when you hit the pits, and then just before you get to your pit, lift off it and then hit the brakes. And that actually gives you a boost in speed for a second or so, which, that's 1 second off the total time. So that works. And some guys are doing that. But whether or not that was it, I don't know.
I have to believe it was when he came in. I mean, and I could be very wrong, but I just have to believe it was right there.
Yeah, well, I do. I believe what they say. Yeah, absolutely.
So
besides, I have to say that Scott lives just down the street, and I don't want him banging on my door.
Well, it's not Scott that I'd be worried about. It's Emma that I'd be concerned about.
Yeah. That you got a point. You got a point there.
So obviously, Paul, you've been to many, many Indy 500s. And have you kept track of how many 500s you've actually been to?
I've been to every 500 since 1960, with the exception of 19, which I missed one, and I can't. I think it was a Bobby Unser win, but that's history.
Right. And I'm sure Bobby wouldn't have let you live that down. That you
no. He would've. Oh, what's the matter with you?
Well, I'm sure Bobby, you got to hear about it.
I'm retired now and can kind of be as idiotic as I want to be.
Well, I'm sure he would. You got to hear about all of his wins many times, though.
Oh,
so
yeah,
more than made up for it.
He was never shy, and it was not uncommon to spend a few minutes at breakfast or something while I heard the world according to Bobby, especially the broadcast world, and he'd talk about his people. He had people. His people say that they didn't want him to do this or that, and so yeah, I love that guy. He was a treat.
Oh man, they're so rare. They're so. I mean, you gotta embrace them when you run across them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, really for me, like every race morning, I mean, I remember every single Indy 500 race morning. It's just a special feeling. You just feel something in the air. It almost feels like, I don't know, Christmas morning or something. What is that feeling for you? Like when, being in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on race day?
It's still the same as it was the first time that I went in. My hair kind of stands up a little bit on the back of my neck, and I drink in the sights and everything, that's much more than just a car race. So I come in and come into the infield, and as soon as I get out of the car, it really emotionally overwhelms me to stand there and think how many years I've been coming, all the changes that I've seen. And what a great race this is. As Roger said when he was getting ready to start the engine, he says it is the largest single-day sporting event in the world, and it is by far. And you're part of it. You know, you've got a city surrounding you in the grandstands.
Yeah. I think the number, someone told me the number for this year was 350,000, which is the biggest crowd since 2016, I believe.
Right, the 100th anniversary of the race, the 100th running. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was huge. It was really huge, and I always look down at the start to see just before they come to the line how many people are sitting in the grandstands across the way. As you know, we're on the inside, and looking across the start finish line. And this year, I saw very, very few empty seats down there. Normally, I see quite a few because for some reason or another, I think some people really favor the idea of sitting that close and getting a crick in their neck as every car goes by. But a lot of people kind of shy away from that area. And this year, no, they were right there. I mean, I was wonderfully impressed by the crowd.
I think it's one of those things where everybody's been, which is, and none of us in America are used to this. We've been locked in our houses. We've been, in a lot of ways, or however you want to put it, our freedoms have been diminished somewhat through the COVID and those types of things. And if you would, in a normal year, if I looked at the gas prices and I looked at the cost, the rise of inflation and everything, I'd say, man, the crowd's going to be light this year. I mean, who can afford it? And I think what we're seeing across the country is people are like, I'm going to go live my life, and we're going to figure out this other, however we figure it out, but I'm going to go live my life.
I think that was very much true at the race, because one of the things I felt, and I talked to fans, was their relief that they could finally get out in the open, and the place was wide open, and it was what they remembered either for a year or two or for much of their life. So there certainly was that feeling just of release, freedom for a moment to not have to worry about anything else. But Lord knows how much it cost them to get there, depending on where they came from.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you look at NASCAR, I mean, all their events seem to be near sellouts. Their crowds are way up than they were before the pandemic. And it's just, and I don't know about concerts, but it seems like most concerts are selling out. It just seems like it's across the board. Like, people are like, I'm going to go live my life. I'm tired of not being able to live. Yeah,
I totally agree with that. I think a lot of people have gone that way and just said, hey, I'm going.
Right.
So, and they came. I mean, I did not expect that crowd, to tell you the truth. There were about 10,000 seats shy on the day before the race. And, they sold some of those, but I would never have guessed that it would have been that huge. And when I hear the figure, how do you count the infield? How do you count the snake pit? Really?
Right.
So, who knows? Who knows what it was? But it was, I think 325,000 is the best number that I've heard. And I think that's at least right.
Well, to be fair, I don't think the people in the snake pit probably even realize there's a race going on.
Doesn't matter. They were there.
I know, exactly.
It's part of the deal.
Always give people a hard time to go to the snake pit.
Yeah. When I was doing ABC and we were warming up in the morning, cameras would just kind of look around for, see what's going on, check out the length of their lens and what their area is and everything. And you could see that, there are folks down there that have already passed out. So there's some people just come to do that and come to party. I don't understand it. I come to see the race and I love it.
Right.
So 30 or 40 years ago was, I guess, the real snake pit. Did you ever actually go into the real snake pit? And I'm sure there's probably a story involving the snake pit and Bobby Unser, I could only imagine.
Yeah, no, there's not one of those. And
really,
the journalists that were covering the race, and of course that was a time when you had 4 qualification days and everything. And the snake pit, on those days was full as it was on race day. But on the like qualifying days, those of us that were working the race, we'd always go down inside turn one. The creek was still there, so we're walking on the fence side of the creek, and you looked in there, and it was fun to watch. It was fun to watch with a fence in between you, but you know, and there were never that many big problems with the snake pit. It's just you kind of let them do what they want and make sure nobody gets hurt. And I think that's been the attitude as long as I remember, and generally that works out. I heard one time that the biggest injury that occurs over race day is people accidentally stepping in hot coals on a campfire that's burned out.
Really?
Oh, I hadn't even thought about
I don't
that.
know if that's true, but it could make sense to me.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. On the Wednesday before the race, the Hall of Fame Museum had they do this series called An Evening With. And An Evening With before the race was Rick Mears and I. And you know, I've always liked that guy. We're buddies. We had to go over what questions I would not ask during the thing, but I didn't ask questions really as much as I just made it a conversation. And he was pretty open and revealing on a lot of things. I mean, he told us everything about his accident the day before qualifying, where he then qualified the pole and then won the 500. And he was almost like he was debriefing an engineer. You know, I felt this spray over my shoulder. I didn't know what it was, and suddenly the car started spinning. It hit the wall. But the greatest thing that he said out of that was, you know, a car will not slow down when it's upside down. That's pretty good.
I noticed on the Dell Jr. Show, Rick seemed a lot more. And I would never call him guard. I don't know Rick, you know, but I've seen him talk before, and he's just a quiet guy.
Yeah.
You know, and but he seemed a lot more forthcoming than he had in years past, maybe. And I'm not quite sure what it is, but I just thought that was really interesting. Or maybe it's a case that somebody just asked him a question. You know, I think Rick may be one of those people where people kind of don't talk to him too because he's kind of quiet.
Well, he's really opened up, and I think that's because he has no real responsibility to a sponsor or anything anymore, and he's doing what he wants to do. He's helping train race drivers, and so he's gotten comfortable with himself in that regard. As soon as he retired, we tried to get him at ABC, and he came up to the booth to kind of do a rehearsal for qualifying, and he was scared to death. His hands were actually shaking. So he had stage fright, something terrible. He's gotten rid of all that now, and he's so pleasant to be with.
I know not long after he won the Speedway, Roger Mears was drove a couple of races for Grant King. My dad worked at Grant's at the time, and we were at Mid-Ohio. And I remember Rick spent a lot of time just down there talking to Roger. And you could just tell he would come in there, and they would compare notes and talk, and you could tell he was just trying to help his brother. And then it just seemed like he was really comfortable there.
Yes.
Out of he's in a trailer, nobody can find him,
right,
and that sort of thing.
And that day, that's who he was. Yeah, he was very comfortable when he was in racing, talking racing, doing racing. He was very comfortable with that, and now he's comfortable with who he is, just being somebody that enjoys teaching new drivers and just being around. He's very pleasant.
Yeah, Rick Mears, man, wow. I mean, wow. I mean, I don't know. We recently had Little Al on the show, and we were actually got to talking to him about when Rick and Michael had their duel at the Speedway,
right?
And how when Michael passed him, everybody assumed that was probably maybe it.
Yeah, and then he came right back at him next lap and did exactly what Michael did to him.
Right, and it was over after that, and he just drove away.
Yeah, right.
And we were just talking about that and just how Rick had this ability to maybe, I don't know if hold back or pull something out, or I don't know what you'd call it, but he had whatever that ability is.
Well, whether or not he actually studies the race, as some drivers do, I don't know that answer. I do know that he sleeps a lot. And I was out at their place in Bakersfield one year and visiting all of them. And Rick was asleep on the couch, and Roger said, "Oh, that's just him preparing for the race. He's dreaming about the 500." So obviously not true, but a fun story.
Yeah, well, he did say, he did make a comment in one of his recent discussions. He said he would, the night before, he would sleep on what they did, and he would think about the changes they need to make, and then he
Mhm.
would think about it again in the morning, and then he would go in and say, "Guys, this is what we got to do."
Right.
And I think, and he may have told the story when he was talking to you, that the first time he didn't do that was when he realized, "Hey, maybe I'm done."
Yeah. Um, and when I was talking to him about that and his leaving, it kind of was that, look, I've accomplished everything, and I'd like to just enjoy my life in another style other than hopping into a car all the time. But
Sure.
yeah, he's just always been super.
So, I guess so. Before the race, did you predict any specific winner? Or so, just tell you a little fun story. I actually predicted. Yeah, Scott knew this was coming. I actually predicted Marcus Ericsson was going to win, and
Did you really?
I have
He did.
multiple witnesses to this. Actually, so Scott went with our buddy Chin to the race, and I told him that Marcus Ericsson was going to win. He actually put money on Marcus and won like 180 bucks, I think.
Wow. I was on two. I was first on Paulo,
Hmm.
and that penalty with the yellow and having to go through the pits and everything, that just killed everything after the race and after that point in the race. And then to show you how good my luck is, I was on Herta. So, and he had essentially an engine problem, a throttling problem that was there pretty much from the start, which is why he was in 25th and didn't move from there for the longest time. And then finally, the engine or some system there just gave up, and so that ended his day. But with that crash too, and having to build the backup car, it was set already for the road race this weekend in Detroit, and to take all the road racing pieces off it and put it back on as a speedway car, that takes a lot. And it would have been great if he could have gotten, one or two laps to shake the
Absolutely.
car down, but the rules don't allow for that. And I understand that, and I agree with that. But how would you like to be back in the field, 25th position, and you're going to shake the car down on the parade lap and the pace laps? That's,
Right.
Yeah, it's got to be terrible.
but he's so good. He just, and he kind of brushes it all off. He's got a great attitude.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I thought it was crazy how, I mean, no one really wrecked all month until what, Dalton Kellett on Monday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of snowballed after that. It was then Kellett, and then it was Malukas, and then it was Herta,
Yeah.
and then Renus,
Right.
Ilott.
Yeah, they rippled all up at the last minute there, didn't they?
Yeah, and then Scott, and then Sage Karen, which most people forgot that Sage even
Yeah.
crashed
Yeah.
at the end of the race.
Well, when I was talking to somebody today who was saying, wasn't it great that the race ended under green? I said it didn't.
Right.
So what are you talking about? Well, there was a crash, Sage, on the last lap, and when the winner crossed the line, he was looking at a yellow light. But
Right.
it also didn't matter. The accident was behind everybody that mattered.
Man, Marcus Ericsson did something I haven't seen there in a while, and that was charge through the pack, pass his way to the front, and then just run away.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's something I was surprised to see this year, and that's something we haven't seen. I don't feel in a while.
No, we haven't. And he's a superlative race driver. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
I think it took him a short while, but a while nevertheless, to figure out the ovals. But once he had them figured out, he's a threat. He's always going to be a threat now. That whole group, Beto O'Ward. I mean, look at him coming up. Look at it, the wisdom that he used on the final lap when he decided not to go through with a pass down in turn one. And that was smart. That was really smart. You know, Takuma Sato tried that a couple of years ago and ended up wrecking the race car. And I think O'Ward figured out, well, it'd be smarter to survive all of this rather than wreck the race car and possibly get hurt. So I like that judgment. I thought he was very sharp that way. He's very mature race driver.
I will tell you, under that red, I said to the people around me, I said, there's no way. And I felt this. I didn't think there was any way that group of drivers could hold off Tony Kanaan.
Well, I kind of thought the same thing too. Though they returned to green, they were pretty spread out. I was kind of surprised at how spread out they were when they came back green again. It also surprised me. And again, I know we're probably talking about a rule that I don't know about, but as soon as that accident happened, I would have thought they would have realized they were going to have to go red if that was their policy to get that race restarted. And that would have given them what, 4 more laps to actually get to the end. And, but the way it worked out fine. I like the use of the red in that case.
Okay. That was actually my next question.
No, I like that. They did it once before and it helped make a race. And I think it did the same thing here, only that Markson was just gone.
Right. Yeah. And he's, and I think he maybe taken everybody a little surprised when he started weaving on the front stretch. Guys typically don't do that on the back straightaway. And I think he probably caught them off guard a little bit.
Listen, I have no idea how all of them put the race cars where they do now. The constant movement on both the straightaways, in and out, and that snake that comes down the front straight and the back straight. They're doing things with cars that's pretty new and very, very spectacular. It's hard to believe that the Firestones hold up to all that, but they do, and they keep stuck. So it works out.
No, I absolutely agree.
One thing that we talked about before, one of the previous times we had you on, was obviously the 1982 Indy 500 finish, probably one of the most iconic radio calls of all time. And, one thing you really talked about was how, and I forget what lap this was, but you had your stopwatch out and you were kind of timing the laps and you figured out that Rick was going to catch Gordon. And so, I mean, when you're doing the radio broadcast or anyone is like, what kind of things are you like? I'm guessing like whenever you get near the end of the race, you're always looking for something to kind of play off of and kind of build it up for the audience, right?
Well, yeah. If you're doing radio, then you're a traffic cop and a play-by-play and a bit of a storyteller. Mm-hmm. But in the play-by-play chair, you do control the race and where the broadcast is going to do and things like that. In television, you don't do that at all. In television, the race coverage is controlled in the TV truck down in the infield. And that if you're in sync with the producer and they're really on top of it, then that's great. Producers who know and understand and enjoy racing. But if you're with one that doesn't, I can hit that button on the private intercom and ask for things, but whether or not I'll get them, you never know. So you get a little bit of everything, but in television, you have absolutely no control of where the telecast is going. You can hint to it. You can get on the intercom and talk about it. Say, this fight for fifth is really, really good. And if you get a producer that doesn't understand racing, then he's going to say, well, it's fifth. I can't get off the leader. If the leader does something while I'm on fifth, that'll be bad. That's what racing is, though.
Right. I guess over the weekend, so they had a drivers, I guess NASCAR does this thing where they have a drivers only kind of crew, right? So they did they did the TV and the pit road and all that. Mm-hmm. And I guess during the race, I guess it was the Xfinity race. I guess during the race, all the drivers understood after the pit stop that the fight for the lead was not the lead. The fight for the lead was behind it. And they were talking about that and not the leader, but they kept showing the leader of the race. And you can hear Kevin Harvick off camera say something to the producers like, hey, this is not.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it just kind of goes back to the same thing, because they understood what they were looking at, whereas the producer, I guess, that wasn't in sync.
And in the coverage of the 500 this year, they had a very heavy commercial load too. And all of that's in the producer's mind. I've got 5 features, each of which cost me $30,000. I really want to get those in if it's appropriate. What the commercial load is and how do I balance it out and not make a silly mistake and like be in a full screen commercial on lap 30 when everybody starts coming in and things like that. Now, producer has very, very good spotters, and most of the spotters are longtime racing people. And so they help get the camera on the right target. But if the truck isn't in sync with all that, then it's not going to be a pleasant day nor a good call.
Right.
Well, Scott, you have anything else?
Yeah, a couple things. One, and this is, I had only one complaint about the entire event.
Okay.
And I feel like you're one of the few people I could talk to about this, and I really value your opinion. The new way that they're trying to do victory lane, where the driver doesn't get out of the car till they get to the top.
Yeah.
I think it just steals the moment. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you watched or not, but I think that immediate moment, and I realize it's just minutes, but minutes or hours at times, depending on what the thing is.
Yeah. It does interrupt the whole continuity of excitement because now you're going to stop the car. Now you're going to turn it around. People are flooding in to get into either on the podium or at least there. So it's difficult for them to work and then to get them up top and set the car in place. That is kind of an interrupted moment there. On the other hand, it's much more controlled when they're up there. You get the team up there, they can start sorting people out so the right people end up there, because if you do it on the ground, sometimes you just lose total control of the whole thing. So that's probably a good part of the thinking. Plus, you got a beautiful background and everything. And whether or not that's necessary, I don't know. I kind of liked it when Victory Lane was down at the pit exit with a cyclone fence behind it. But I kind of swing a couple of different opinions on that. And one is that I'd like to see him hop out of the car. Of course, Elio did that for us. I'd like to see that emotion not drained before he stands up and pulls his helmet off.
I agree. And I get it. I understand what they're doing. I do. And I realize that is a ridiculous thing to complain about. But I think it's those little moments is what makes the Speedway different. The 500 different than any other motorsports event in the world. And I hate to see it just kind of tempered, I mean, because the Will Power just getting out screaming, or Elio screaming, or Simon Pagenaud has his dog with him, or there's just moment after moment after moment, or Little Al. I mean, would we have ever gotten Little Al's statement? You just
don't know what racing means or what this
Indy
means.
Means,
The 500.
Yeah.
But I wondered, maybe five years ago or so, whether or not younger people felt the same way about Indianapolis as I did, or were they going a different direction? Were they looking for different things? And I was quite surprised when I realized what they were telling me was they only have this frame of reference, and that's their 500, and they love it for that. And then we come out of a different era, and we like this, we like that, and change is real, and so it's going to happen. And though I think a driver would be really smart if he jumped out of the car a little early and ran around. It's pretty entertaining. I think what they worry about there too is television having to go over. They want to get that interview on, but if he's like Elio running up and down the track, you could see him begging him to come back, get in the car.
Right. No, I respect. I obviously I respect your point of view on it. It just it's just something, it's just, that's something of mine, that's a weird thing that I see. But other than that, it was a great event as
Yeah.
always.
And it's always different. There's always
Yeah.
something different about that event. I'll tell you a little story about 82 because I was talking with Rick about it and kind of dissecting it. And I told him what I was doing. And he said, well, on that last stop, I got nicked by Herm Johnson. And on the last stop, they filled the car up when they didn't need to. And he said, so I was maybe 270 pounds heavier than I needed to be in running that. So if those two things hadn't happened, then, maybe I could have beaten Gordon John Cock. And I said, well, okay, what actually happened when ABC put the picture of his wife as two of them were going in turn one? Because we know turn one was the key. What happened there? And he said, Gordy just outfoxed me. He pulled me way, way down and then kind of made a quick move and it was his. There was no question it was his after turn one.
Man, what a great battle. Just
Yeah.
just another great moment, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
and I think the ending of this year's race was a great moment. And Marcus Ericsson, at the end of the day, deserved it. He
Yeah.
was he was certainly the fastest driver in that last stint.
But I think that Scott Dixon's going to really be thinking over that $2 million mistake he made. So.
Yeah. No, I think so
that one
too.
hurts.
Yeah.
He boy, I mean, it's one of those things like, I mean, it's like I don't know, it's just like the sun rising. You just assume that Scott's going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And there's something about, big events that will bring out the best and the worst in you.
Yeah, especially the Indianapolis 500.
Right.
I think I said this before to you guys. Most of the races in the season, all of the races now are like about 200 miles. But the Indy 500 being 500, that means there's 300 miles of no man's land out there. And that's where things happen. Now, everybody tries to kind of keep a pace through the mid part of the race, but then you see them starting to position as you get into the closing laps, the last 100 miles maybe. It always just turns out a little different, and it's always special. I've never seen two 500s that were identical.
No, never. There never are. Never are.
Yeah,
Paul,
I think
no, go
this
ahead,
year.
Aaron.
Oh no, I'm sorry. No, I think this year we were talking about like Dixon was just leading like pretty much the whole race. And I think people at that point just like, oh, he's going to win the race. But I knew in the back of my head, like kind of like what you're saying, you always have to expect the unexpected with Indy. Yeah. And I mean, think about all Roberto Guerrero, Michael Andretti. I mean, there's so many things out there very similar to where something happens and obviously they don't win. And I'm sure for Scott that'll be something he'll probably remember for the rest of his life.
Oh yeah, I when I help mentor younger announcers doing motorsports, the one thing I tell them is don't ever give it up. You got a guy nine car length out in front and running away from everybody, and with only 6 laps to go. Don't give that up. Don't cheat your audience of the mystery of that. Don't say, well, he's got it made. He's just going to cruise now. Add to the mystery. Discuss like the drivers do about what they're thinking, what they're hearing in the car. And, when they're out there in front like that, they all say, man, I could hear everything. And I was worried the whole way that something was going to happen and I wouldn't make it. But you don't, when I'm talking to other announcers, I tell them that just be, don't mess it up for your audience. Let them have fun too. Because if you're sitting in the stands with them, they wouldn't be giving up. So.
Right. And I'm glad you said that because I almost forgot something else I was going to bring up. Lately, for whatever reason, I've been watching a lot of old ESPN open wheel broadcasts. So like Thursday Night Thunder and even the early stuff, like that stuff from 79, 80.
Right.
And of course, that takes me right back to Bob Jenkins. And the one thing I really took away I was really kind of just trying to pay more attention to everything on something I was watching recently. And one thing that he and Larry Newber, I felt were so good at was they were announcers. They were calling the action, but they were as excited as a regular fan would be, at calling that action. And so I just felt like they had this great way of describing the moments the way a fan saw them.
Yeah, well, because they had the passion. They
Right.
were enjoying that race as much as anybody else there. In those days too, the television was less strict in how you would do your call of a race. And the two of them, Thursday Night Thunder and everything, they loved racing, and that's what came through, and that's what I think we all wanted to see come through.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I mean, it just is what made them so great at what they did and why those shows were so popular.
Yep.
So
Those are good shows. Those were really good
boy, they
shows.
were. I just think it's funny. I love the old original stuff where they're like showing hot laps.
Yeah.
Stuff you
Oh,
would
yeah.
never show today. I mean, they're just trying to fill as much time as they can fill.
Oh, yeah, I produced the first ESPN sprint car race. It was Eldora. It was
Right.
even before ESPN was on the air. And yeah, they wanted unloading. They wanted hot laps. They wanted, guys going to the concession stand, I think. They wanted to get as much time out of it as they could because they didn't have that much inventory at that time. And they were counting on auto racing to help build the network. And that may be an important thing to point out, that ESPN used auto racing because they understood that the auto racing fan was very, very faithful. And if somebody said, well, go out and buy this because it's on so-and-so's car, they do that. And so also, if ESPN is therefore putting a bunch of races on and putting everything on, that's going to draw the racing fan again and the racing fan's loyalty. And it worked out for them. I mean, grew it enormously.
I can't agree with that anymore. And I know what ESPN meant to so many people I knew. It just gave people a chance to be seen. And
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk about whatever we want. Jeff Gordon's not Jeff Gordon today if it's not for Thursday Night Thunder.
And Larry Nuber, I might add. Larry had a lot to do with his success.
Absolutely. Larry Nuber, people don't know how much Larry Nuber did for Jeff Gordon.
Yeah. No, he did a lot. He did a great deal. Yeah.
Well, Paul, before we let you go, I know you are involved with like a new show now, and I was looking for the link for that. I do apologize, I couldn't find it. So I'll give you a second, kind of talk about that. I know there's like a new radio show or something that you're doing.
Well, it's kind of an experiment, and I know I should remember the link, but I don't. But it's three of us. Denny Miller, who's been going to the race since the Second World War, and has an amazing account of history that he can do. And then Bob Gates, who is a contemporary writer on the Indianapolis 500, and then me. And all it is kind of, it's just race fans sitting around talking about stuff. We might be talking about something specific to this race, and somebody will remember, well, did that happen to somebody so many years ago? Oh yeah, and then we start talking about that race. And so it's just, it's just a bunch of guys sitting there and just talking about racing, and there's no particular format on it or anything, but it's fun to do. I don't know how popular it is yet, but it's there once a week.
That's awesome. I love that.
Good.
There's nothing better than bench racing at any level of it.
Yep.
So, and I know we keep saying one last thing. Who do you see? I mean, because I don't know. There's a lot of people I don't know, right?
Mhm.
And so when, as Donald Davison, starts to be older now, who's the next person? Who is our next Donald Davison?
Well, I think there are a number of guys that are probably equal to Donald in terms of memory, but also Donald was a savant, and he could, pick tiny things out that maybe the current historian might not do because he didn't feel it was relevant, and he didn't have the capability that a guy like Donald had. But they're out there. There's one guy I know that I think is just marvelous on it. Everybody calls him Poppy. He's a former mechanic, and now he's working in restoration at the Hall of Fame Museum. Dave Popoloritz is his real name.
Okay.
You can feed him a fact on the 500 and he's going to talk about it forever. What you won't get from him or any of the others, and like I say, there are a number of others that have that kind of dedication, that kind of memory. But you're not going to get the Donald stories that he told again and again and again. And everybody loved to hear it on 100th time they heard it. So
yeah.
You're going to get a different style, but it's going to be there.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
We miss Donald. We miss him a lot.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I love just turn on, and like you said, you'd hear the same. You might hear the same story 3 times in 1 week.
Yep, that's still good.
Yeah, that's right. I agree.
He was great. He was really good.
Paul, thank you so much.
You got it.
Always a pleasure. And man, I'm gonna try to find your show and watch it. And I really always enjoy talking to you.
Denny Miller, whose show concept it is going to kill me for not having the link. So
we'll get it.
I'll write it down so I have it next time.
We'll get it. It's all right.
You got it.
We'll make sure we'll get it and we'll put it in the beginning of this or something if we can. So
all right, that's cool. That's great.
Well, Paul, yeah, thank you so much, Paul. Like I tell a lot of people, you're definitely an absolute legend of the Speedway, and like we were saying, you were finally inducted into the Hall of Fame, which is really cool to see. And we joked about the last time you were on, we were joking about how whenever I showed my girlfriend something with racing on YouTube, it was always you doing the broadcast.
Oh, good. And she left you, right?
No. If she did, it would be for probably other reasons, not for that reason. But no, she has not left me. And actually, since then, we were watching one of the old hot dog eating contests, and there you were again.
Goodness.
And there you were again,
yeah.
Not even racing. And there
He's
you
everywhere.
are.
He's everywhere.
Exactly. Well, Paul, once again, thank you so much, and we really enjoy it. Thank you.
You're the best, bud. Take care.
But again, thank you guys. See you later.
So we are joined now by a five-time starter of the Indianapolis 500 and returning guest, Spike Gehlhausen. Spike, as always, it's always a pleasure having you on.
Thank you, Aaron. I do appreciate it, enjoy it. And Mr. Bowie, you're always a pleasure to talk to. So,
yeah. So I saw Spike, obviously, Scott, last Saturday at the Legends Day signing. I said, we were going to do the show, whatever, and I was like, it gives you an opportunity, Spike, to kind of make fun of or give Scott a hard time. So I think even if it's not for a special event like for the 500 race review, whatever, I think we could definitely get Spike on at any point just to give you a hard time.
Well, Scotty deserves most of it. So
he does. He dishes it out a lot, and he takes it pretty well. So we have. I
absolutely deserve everything I get. So I will never ever argue that. The trick is to be able to duck and dive the ones that are coming in and give a couple jabs back.
Well, you got to keep active in this game.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So pretty eventful month. And really for you, Spike, really well on the track, obviously, but off the track, you were just talking about your grandson has a quarter midget now, so maybe one day we'll see another generation of Gehlhausen racing the Indy 500.
Yeah, well, that would be nice, but we'll see. It's a long way to go from 6-year-old to there. So,
hey, it's a good place to start.
Oh yeah, it's a great place to start, and and I wasn't going to do anything like a quarter midget for years. I kept thinking, they're just, and then I just got the bug one day, and there was one for sale, and I just had to bring it home. So that's how it works. Then I spent all winter going through it. So, hey, now we got a quarter midget set here ready to go, and I got to develop a driver to get in it. So,
just when you think you're out of the game, just right when you think you're out of the game, it drags you back in.
It drags you back in, yeah. And the real thing is, I got Ben, and then I got Zach, who's roughly about 2 years behind him. And then now there's a third one on the way. So, and it's another boy. So I'll be quarter midget racing for at least 10 years.
Minimum.
Yeah.
minimum of 10 years.
That's if they get tired of it at an early age.
Right.
Or they run out of cash, one way or the other.
Right.
I'm probably going to run out of cash.
Well, if you ever run out of cash, you can go to Scott Bowie because I'm sure he can definitely help you in that department.
Oh, yeah. I know. He's got to go in the backyard.
Yeah, the money tree.
The money tree.
Well, I can show you. I can show you the money bushes. They're all brown now, so they're dying off. So,
yeah, isn't that what racers always depend on? That money tree.
Boy, I think always, right?
Always. The big question in the sport, right? Where's the cash come from?
Well, it's the how fast do you want to go? Well, I don't know how much money you got.
That's it.
So,
man, you hear some stories too, even today. And I won't say names because I don't know if it's true or not. But you hear stories about some of these drivers that have got
and that's never stopped you before.
That's right. I'm gonna still tell it. Some of these drivers, some of the deals, they're in, they're actually not only paying for their car, but they got money on another car on the team.
Yeah.
And it's just stuff like that. It's just you're like, wow, this sport just never changes.
No, yeah. Christ, and the amount of different, the amounts of money coming in that these guys raise is phenomenal. So my hat's off to them in that ring. That is probably the toughest thing there is to do, as it always was for me as a racer, was try to raise funds. So I don't think it's changed much out there.
It's hard. That's a hard game.
Yeah, it's a hard, tough game.
So when we had
easy.
Sorry, what's that?
I said the racing comes easy compared to raising the money to go racing.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of really great race car drivers who this sport just left them behind because they couldn't raise that money anymore.
Yeah, tons of them. More than there is involved, right?
That's right.
So, Spike, you were actually one of our first guests on the show when we started this a little over a year ago. And one of my favorite discussions we had then was talking about just what it meant to you to make your first ever Indy 500 in 1976. What it meant to your dad and just the whole team in general. And, you talk about race day and how special that was. After all these years, obviously you're not competing, but you go to every Indy 500. I'm guessing, obviously you went this year. Do you still what does it mean to be there on race day? Do you still kind of get that same feeling that you got when you race? It's just a special feeling. So we just have Paul Page on, which will be probably before this segment on the same episode. And he was just talking about how he just gets the same feeling every single year, just how special it is.
Yeah, I tell you what, race day, there's nothing like race day. Even if I was driving or if I'm not driving and I walk out, I get the same old feeling. I feel like like this year, every time race morning, I feel like I'm getting ready. I should put on my uniform and go over and run because that's just the feeling I get. It's just such a unique facility and unique place, and there's nothing like it. I like sitting in the pits and watching the stands fill up. It just brings over an overall a great feeling, and and I appreciate every moment I had there as a competitor, and then just being there not as a competitor. So it's a special facility, and I enjoy tremendously. So race day is always special.
Now, when you were actually racing in the race, was there something like maybe part of the pre-race festivities or, seeing it back home again in Indiana? Was there something that always just was your favorite part or always just kind of got you ready for the race?
Well, it's actually when I actually drove there, I didn't hardly pay attention to any of that.
Sure.
I had already started getting my focus, and by the time they were singing back home again in Indiana, I was already zoned in, and I don't remember half of them. I remember a couple of them, but strictly was talking about the cars and talking mechanics and seeing what we're going to do and going over game plans. And so when I was racing or driving on race morning, that was totally different. I didn't never take a chance or not a chance, or take the opportunity to sit back and look at anything. I was always too focused on getting ready to go racing.
Right.
Since Mom passed, I thought a lot more about this year's 500, and I thought back to the first 500 I went to, which was 79. Actually, I didn't go to 76. And I remember leaving. I remember how, like, being at your house, waking up that morning. His parents lived on McCrae Street. That's where the race cars were.
Yeah.
And
right.
they lived on McCrae Street. Woke up this morning, and I mean, the house was just full of people. I mean, I don't know how many people were at that house. And then everybody left for the race. And then me and Mom actually walked down McCrae through one of the gates under the tunnel to our seats in the grandstands. And I'd never forget that. And that place just never. I don't really have the memory of being a competitor there, obviously. But it just, for me, year after year after year, for whatever reason, my bond with the place gets stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah, I can see. Well, where can you go and have 350, 400,000 people all interested basically in the same thing, watching the same thing?
Right.
It's just awesome to have that kind of place, and then to fill it up, like they did Sunday is pretty remarkable, and so it gives you that special excitement. As long as I get that excitement, I'll go to race day. That's for sure. But
right,
because that's always going to be special, I believe. I don't think that feeling will ever go away.
Yeah, it won't for me. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So obviously Scott Dixon led basically the first three quarters of the race. And, we were kind of joking before, like, there's really not a lot to talk about, but so when Dixon was just dominating the race, did you actually think that he's actually going to win this thing? Or, because I sure didn't. I was like, something's going to happen. I just had a feeling, because it's kind of the Dixon curse now, as some people have kind of joked about.
Well, he had it under control so well. And then when Palou did his thing and got put to the back, then I sat back and I thought, well, this is going to be the telltale sign. Can you come from middle of the pack or the end of the pack and come back to the front? And obviously you couldn't, because he never did. It took, his penalty was about halfway, I think. I'm not for sure, but I believe about halfway. And then I knew when Dixie got penalized and his day was just done. I mean, there was no way he was going to climb back into it.
Right.
But I really, God, he was strong race day.
Yeah.
But track position was everything, as you saw. They played the track position game perfect right up until he messed up coming into pits.
Yeah. He, like we were telling Paul Page, when he peeled off, I thought he was hot when he peeled off, and I was concerned at that moment that he was going to speed. And then, of course, you see the car wiggle at the line, which tells you he's hard on the brakes, knowing he's in trouble. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if I don't know if I've ever really seen anybody give one away in person like that.
Right. I mean, that's a terrible way to lose it. I mean, that's horrible. And I sat back. I hate that speed limit in the pits. I absolutely hate it. And
when did that start? I mean, when did that start? Did they not have a speed limit when you raced?
Oh no. As fast as you could run down pit lane is how fast you went. And I want to tell you, there's times we probably went down pit lane 150, 60 mile an hour, easy.
Oh,
come in hotter than that. And but going out, it was just awesome.
I remember the only year I worked there in '88, and we talked about this before, man. Mario coming into pits is one of the scariest things I ever saw in my life. It was absolutely terrifying being out on pit lane when he'd come in.
And you know, it was, but it was part of the racetrack, and that's what you had to do. And you had to bring it in there as hot as you could bring it in.
Sure.
And so, and I don't, you know, and we didn't hurt any more people than they hurt today. And as a matter of fact, I bet if you count them, I bet we hurt a lot less because everybody was over on the pit wall, you know, behind the pit wall until we stopped.
Right.
Once we stopped, then they came out. You know, they weren't sitting out there waiting for us. So, so that was a pretty good safety factor in itself. But you know, we didn't hurt very many people at all in the pits. I have a tough time remembering anybody really getting banged up, but I'm sure there were.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't remember so much back in the older days. That's for sure.
No, nothing like you know they have in the last 10 or 12 years, and really in the last 4 or 5 years, it's gotten a lot safer, a lot better. You know, earlier on, I guess about probably 7, 8 years ago, they were banging guys pretty hard there for a while.
Right.
You know, they were hurting a lot of pit guys. It was pretty dangerous to be in the pits. But so anyhow, I mean, I never cared for I don't care for the speed limits, and I would love to see them do away with them. Now, I know guys would be running 200 down pit lane today, but, you know, it's a racetrack.
Right. And, you know,
that's what you do. You race at racetracks. And if the pit's part of the racetrack, it's part of the racetrack.
I would think like, and I'm sure everyone deals with that kind of thing different, but for Dixon, I mean, that's got to be something that'll probably, you know, haunt him for a long time. And I guess every competitor is different. I'm sure like, you know, and I don't know personally, like how you dealt with things like that, but I'm sure, you know, everyone has something where they're like, man, if I would have done this differently, you know, maybe.
I guarantee you. Yeah. I guarantee you when Dixie's 65 years old, he's going to wake up every morning and think, what in the hell would I do? Why did I do that?
Right.
Right.
Another second wouldn't hurt anything. But hey.
It's funny at the award banquet, Wama Toye made a joke about coming into pits. And the funny part about that is that he lost 2 Brickyard 400s, I believe, speeding on pit lane. I know he lost one. I know he lost one speed on pit lane. One he just dominated all day.
Yeah. Yeah, the one he dominated. Oh, you know, that was I mean, again, that's a terrible way to lose one.
Oh, but, yeah, absolutely.
You know, God, I would think you would want anything but something like that. I mean, because like Dixie, he ran so perfect all day. To have that happen then at the 3/4 mark, you know, he was over the hump. He was going on cruise.
So did he actually speed like coming into the pits, like before, like right before getting to the line, or at what point was he actually speeding?
Well, I think he crossed the line too fast. He came in too hot.
Because they have the button. Because they have a button still on the steering wheel, right? For speed, or yeah. But
they got to get wound down for that to take effect.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, they got to get down to a certain speed to cross that line. Then that button controls them. But until that point, you know, if you're just a little late, it's a tough one.
You know, speaking of that steering wheel, when you look at those steering wheels today,
oh, those are neat.
I mean, would you like to have driven with something like that?
Oh, that's great. That's the greatest thing in the world. All those lights flashing and all that stuff going off. Reminders, you know, it's
like your phone.
No, they got front bar, you know, lights to tell you if you got your front bar in or your rear bar. Man, that's pretty cool. I think it would be neat. I mean, all I had on my steering wheel in '76 was a kill switch.
And it might have been bent a little bit. It could have been bent a little bit. We don't know.
Yeah, it could have been. So they're a long way from what they used to be. Man, I think they're neater than heck. And the gear shift lights, or the RPM lights, or whatever you call them, that's pretty neat.
Well, heck,
That would
steering
really
wheel.
been handy on road racing. I could see what that would be. Between that and paddle shifters,
Yeah.
their road racing is nothing like what we had to go through. I mean, nothing. That's that's got to be like driving a Cadillac down the interstate compared to an Alfie with a 4-speed gearbox. And you got to listen by ear whether you got the RPM, because if you look at the tach, it's too late. You've done over revved.
Well, heck, the steering wheel. The steering wheel probably cost more than the cars did back then, right?
Oh, I'm sure. I bet. I don't know what those steering wheels cost, but
I don't know what they cost. And they use them in all the divisions now. Like even the feeder series use versions of them.
Right.
And so the IndyCar ones are made by Cosworth. I bet they're a minimum 10, if not 20 grand. I bet they got to be close to 20 grand.
I would bet. I would think so.
And you better have 2 or 3 of them on hand by the sounds of things, because every once in a while the contacts sound like they go bad in them.
Yeah.
And they won't work right.
But I didn't know you could specialize them like these guys. Like certain guys had certain things light up, and I mean that'd be pretty neat. That'd be a big time help. I could see that. So, yeah, I think
there was somebody last year. It was like their birthday or something, and they got the steering wheel to light up and do something. I forget who it was, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
they had like a message on the steering wheel.
Yeah, we couldn't do that in the old days. There's been some bad messages and stuff going on.
Well, no, I'm sure there were messages. They were just handwritten.
Yeah, handwritten.
Well, they were put on stickers and stuck to the center of the steering wheel or on the side of the tub. Yeah, there's a lot of those.
Oh man.
So we didn't have things light up. That's just cool.
Now, one thing we were talking about with Paul, so the Colton Herta deal, it was kind of an interesting situation. So he wrecks on carb day, and they had to convert. I think they converted his backup car, which was already like a road course car, to an oval car. And obviously, he had a lot of issues during the race. I forget what the actual issue was, but they didn't get an actual like a warm up lap or shakedown lap. Now, back in the day when you were racing, Spike, if that would have happened, would they have given you like any type of shakedown lap on like Saturday, or I don't know how that has changed?
No, they wouldn't. When that carb day practice was over, that racetrack was shut and you were done. Mm-hmm. We blew a motor in 76 on carb day and had to put a new motor in, and we had to dyno the motor in the garage up on jack stands, or we tried to dyno the motor, the new one going in, and didn't do a very good job because we blew that one on the first lap of the race. So, but we had a special issue we don't want to get into. We got into that before, but no, when that thing's done in carb day, you couldn't take that race car. Can't leave the garage, or it can't leave the garage area. Definitely can't get on the racetrack. So you're pretty well done. That's the way it was when we were there.
Didn't realize that.
You had to, I mean, like when Poncho crashed, what was that, 74, I think, on carb day, in Fletcher's Eagles, they had to rebuild that whole thing and do everything. And when he started race day, that was it. That was his first lap back in it. So when the race dropped, when the green flag fell. So it was tough. It was hard. In that aspect, I don't think it's ever changed. Not that I know.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
I don't know if they're allowed today to take the cars out of the facility. I don't think so, but I don't know.
So either. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're not.
Yeah, I mean, in the old days you could. You couldn't take anything out. So
yeah,
they wanted everything.
Yeah, I just felt so bad for Colton because I he probably, I mean, Andretti cars really weren't there. I mean, well, Rossi moved up quite a bit during the race.
What did
Rossi was probably Rossi.
Yeah,
Rossi
finally.
ran 5th or 6th, right?
Yeah, and he was moving up. Elio was moving up. I remember at one point my dad looked at me. He's like, I just have a feeling Elio's going to win this race. But all along, and Scott's going to give me a hard time about this, but you know, a lot of people say, oh, Dixon. They thought Dixon was going to win. It was his race, lose, whatever. All along, I knew Marcus Ericsson was going to win the race. Literally, I predicted it.
Really?
So
I did.
Yeah, you did.
I never even thought of Marcus Ericsson.
Buddy of mine won money because of it.
Yep.
There you go.
So I've told so many people, it was just so weird. Like I feel like I should go buy a lottery ticket. Because I was literally, so we were in a couple things. So first off, we were in the track Thursday during media day. I was with my dad, and Marcus walked by us, and I go, there's your 2022 Indy 500 winner. He just kind of looked at me weird. I just remember thinking like this guy's life is going to change in 3 days. And it was really weird. But I walked up to David Land, who we had on the preview show last year with you, Spike, on race day. And I said, Marcus Ericsson is winning this race. And he said, if Marcus wins this race, I'm jumping off the grandstand. Fortunately, we had to do a welfare check on David. David is still alive and well, and he has not jumped off the grandstand.
Well, you're good. I'm going to tell you what, it was
luck. It was luck. I was very confident about it, and I almost created a what was that? Was FanDuel or what is it?
Well, there's the Caesars Sportsbook, and then I think that's what was at the track, and then
whatever Chin did. I forget. DraftKings. I think it was DraftKings.
Yeah, he did DraftKings.
Yeah, I almost created an account and put money on it because I was that confident about it, but I didn't. But I should have, because I would have won about $180 if I just put $10 on it.
Yeah, you should have. And that kind of confidence, yeah.
Yeah, Chin still owes me. Chin owes me for that for sure.
I mean, you take Rossi. After Rossi, what was the next Andretti car?
Well, I guess in a weird way, you could say the Meyer-Shank cars are Andretti cars because they run their suspension.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so they do they build all their suspension stuff. But it's Meyer-Shank engineers and that sort of thing. But after that, I couldn't even begin to tell you who was after that.
Well, I tell you, between Andretti and Penske, I mean, those two had the worst days I've ever seen.
Yeah,
those people have it. Just, not counting their racing days, but counting their car owner days. Man, Penske, he didn't have anybody hit anything.
Newgarden was in the top 10 and he stalled it on his last pit stop, and then Will Power just faded to the rear.
Yeah, he had a bad stint early on. Well, he just went backwards and never recovered like everybody else. I mean, track position was absolutely king, and you got to the back, you were in trouble because you could not drive your way back to the front.
You get to run in the same speed as the car in front of you.
Yeah,
so it doesn't matter. If you're with the fastest car on the track, you're going to run that speed. And if you're at the slowest car on the track, you're going to run that speed.
There you go. Was anybody complaining about turbulence, or why couldn't they use the draft and pick up and pull up? Were they losing ground effects?
I believe it's one of those deals after if you're like the third or fourth car in line, that I believe it just has so much turbulence that it doesn't allow you to draft right. Like you can't, if you're running the line, and once you get back to the third or fourth car, you can't really just pull them. But we say all this, and Marcus Ericsson actually did chase down and pass. He passed Felix, and he passed Pato. And Kanaan actually chased down and passed. He passed his way up into eventually third. So we say all of this, and truthfully, Ericsson did something that I haven't seen there in a long time, and that's pass guys and drive away.
Right. Yeah, he was. He had Well, I'm going to tell you, like, Ganassi's motors were just strong.
They
I
were
don't know
good.
what else it could be. Or their aerodynamic package was strong. Something they had a hand up on everybody.
Yeah, they've got something figured out, and I don't know if maybe it's in the suspension, ride heights when the car's on the track running, or
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is, but they've definitely put the entire package together where, there was two teams. Is that right, Aaron? There was two teams plus Takumo in the Fast 12. Is that right?
Yeah, because there's all the Ganassi guys, right? And I know, so they have they did the other autograph session. I think it was Thursday. They do the museum. It's like the museum autograph session with a bunch of legends. And I know a couple of people who went, and Dario was sitting next to Chip. And Dario, I remember someone said Dario was talking to Chip about how they hoped that it rained on Carb Day because they were that confident with their cars, like you were saying, Scott, and they knew that they had a really good chance for race day, and they wanted it to rain because they knew they were already there, and they didn't want to give any other team a chance to figure it out. And I guess they were right. Obviously, they had it figured out.
Yeah, they got it. They had something figured out. I mean, Dixie and Pillow and Ericsson, obviously.
Jimmy
They
Johnson
got in the front.
early.
They just drove away. I mean,
yeah, Johnson faded early, and I didn't figure Johnson would be able to stay up there. He's just never raced like that there.
No.
And then that crash he had, that was just driver error. He missed the corner by a half car width.
Yeah.
He missed the bottom by a half car width.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have stepped out on him a little bit and drove him down there. I don't know. But I mean, he entered super low. And then, and of course, Pillow had the penalty. Dixon had the penalty. Johnson crashed, but you had Kanan, who was up front, and you had Ericsson, who was up front. And
Yes.
I honestly thought when they had that red flag that Tony Kanan might win the race, because
Yeah, absolutely.
I really felt like he was we all know how aggressive he is.
Right.
I didn't expect Ericsson to be so aggressive with the start and start that snake down the front straightaway. That's usually what they do on the back straightaway.
Right. Right. But when Pat O'Ward pulled up beside him, and I'm thinking, Ericsson's going to run flat out. He's been running flat out. Pat O'Ward, if he pulls up there and he stays with that, that's kind of a fool's errand, because if the guy on the inside is running flat out, I don't know how you're going to drive around him.
Right.
He's got to lift something. Somebody's got to lift. But Pat O'Ward did a good job, and he brought it home second, and he had a really good day. I know he's disappointed he didn't get the win, but Ericsson was just too strong.
He was. Like I said something to somebody there. I said, what's crazy is, did Dixon and Pillow's cars, were they saving something to the end? Because like I said, Ericsson and Kanan had something at the end they didn't have all race.
Yeah, absolutely.
They were just, they were fast at the end of the race.
Yeah.
And
like
I
something
just wonder
happened, right?
I just wonder if they were just sitting on something
Or
the entire
conserving, right?
race. Yeah, I just wonder if the other two, were sitting on something the entire race and not trying to show their hand. And I wonder too if that's why they kept swapping the lead a little bit too. They'd pick up each other's draft and save a little fuel and all of that.
Right. Right. And I figured they're swapping the lead just to keep the fuel balanced right.
Yeah.
Just keep the guy in the lead's not going to get as good a mileage as the guy running second. So, I figured they were swapping the lead just to do that, just keep their fuel, their mileage right. But I don't know. I wish I knew what they had.
Right.
Yeah,
that was the thing with Dixon, it made me skeptical, and I just had a feeling he wasn't going to win, obviously, like we were saying, but it just, for someone to be leading like the whole race like he did, at some point, like you said, it's got to hurt your fuel mileage. You're not going to get the same mileage. So I don't think you would want to lead the whole race.
Oh, but the checks are nice.
I mean, he broke a record at least, right? I mean, he broke
Yeah, I
Al
guess.
Senior's
I don't know.
record. So, but and so I mean, obviously, so I paid a little bit more attention to Marcus Ericsson because, like we said, I predicted it. But the thing I noticed with Ericsson, and I was watching him throughout the race, he was there. Like, he wasn't leading, he wasn't even second. He was like top 5 pretty much the whole race. And like
Right.
Scott said, it seemed like he was just there, and then right at the end he just took off. And I was, paying more attention to that, like I said, and that's really what it seemed like, because he was there the whole race, and he just waited for the right moment. And kind of reminded me of Elio in a way from last year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wish I have to admit, I didn't pay any attention to Ericsson till he got in the lead. So I kind of missed the whole thing. I don't know why. I just discounted him, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I think the real question, the reason I picked Pelot this year is because I actually picked Pelot this year because I felt he learned the racecraft last year, knew what he could do, knew what he couldn't do. And that was the reason why I picked against VK, because I didn't think VK had the racecraft yet. I didn't think Ericsson had the racecraft, to be very honest with you. Even though he's run now, this is like 3rd or 4th year.
I think it was his third. I think.
Yeah, 3rd year. I thought Pato was going to be, and I forgot how well he ran last year. But there's just something about having to be in that race a few times before you really get it. Not everybody. Obviously, there's been rookie winners or second-time winners, but I just feel like it's not an easy thing to win that early in your career.
Right. No, you have to have the true unfair advantage to win in your rookie year, whether it's mechanical or it's just the act of the racing guys, and you just luck into it, like a Graham Hill type scenario.
Right.
I mean, Graham ran good, Hill, in his rookie year, but half the field wasn't there anymore. So,
right.
You have to have something like that.
Speaking of rookie years, now, is there any more political award in motorsports than Rookie of the Year at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
No, that's always been a political football. I mean,
right.
It never makes any sense, ever. And and I always and don't take this wrong. I never could figure out how they could have had Larry Rice and Rick Mears share the Rookie of the Year award in '79, because Larry didn't, I mean, he was just there.
Right.
So, it's such a political thing. It doesn't really, to me, it discounts the whole thing. It always has, because it's so, you just got to be in the right circle. And that's about all that really matters there. It's just being in the right circle.
Yeah, I just always, when that Rookie of the Year award comes around, very few times does it ever go as smoothly as it should. And I'm Jimmy was, I'll give Jimmy that. I thought, his qualifying was great. Obviously, Carvana does a ton for the race. Does a ton for IndyCar. Bottom line is they're probably one of the most active sponsors in the series.
There's no doubt. And if you really think about it, and you really want to give an award, I will have to give it to Johnson, because that save in qualifying, was the most outstanding save I've seen for a long time.
Right.
When he was qualifying, and he saved it down there and won. Now, I know there was probably about 90% luck with 10% skill there, but still, it was pretty awesome.
What I was surprised is it didn't, because you can see where the right rear left the track, and he's lucky that thing didn't bite the right rear and drive him toward the inside fence. He did a nice job not getting so much wheel in it.
Yeah.
That it made for a terrifying ride afterwards, but
Right.
Well,
Well,
I
that's
just felt like he and Grosjean both, though, and nothing. I think they're great race car drivers. I just felt both. The race was a little big for him this year.
Yeah.
And I thought you saw it in qualifying. I thought Roman got very lucky several times to not get the fence off too. He finally got it done.
Right.
And that's no knock against him as a driver. It just, he danced with that and danced with that and danced with that, and you can only do it for so long.
Yeah, especially at the speedway. You keep dancing
Right.
with it, she's going to jump out there and grab you.
Right.
And, so, because that's what makes it Indianapolis. That's what makes it so tough.
Right.
It's not like any other racetrack. So,
Absolutely. Well, one thing I wanted to ask Spike. So Monday I was fortunate enough to get to do the 2-seater with Mario, which was probably one of the greatest moments of my life, to be completely honest. But it's pretty cool. And one thing so it was my first time ever in an Indy car. You kind of say it's Indy car. First time in a car with that much downforce, and getting to experience the G forces. And so for the passenger, Mario has like the headrest and probably the Hans device and all that. But my head was pretty loose in there and it was moving all around. And that was my first time like going through the corner, just feeling the G forces. I couldn't even move my head like from the headrest. And that's probably pretty close. I mean, when you race Spike, they didn't really have any type of head restraints or anything like that. So your helmet, your head is in there pretty much freely moving around, right?
yeah, right. Yeah.
How
Yeah,
much was there a lot of padding like around your helmet, or was it?
No, the only thing we put in when I first ran there in 76, we didn't have anything. We wore kind of a neck collar a little bit to let the helmet kind of set on it. And that was pretty well it. But then cornering speeds got so high that we just build a little headrest off the right side of the race car, and I had just a little cushion that my head would lay against. Going through the corners, I could relax my neck muscles. In the late 70s, early 80s, cornering speeds started getting too high. You had to have something to hold your head up. But not, today, God, they're trapped in there pretty good. Those helmets are, all the padding and all the places to set their head, and it's pretty secure for them in today's world.
We had when we had Pete Hosmer on, one of the things that he was talking about was one of his first oval races. I think he said like 25% of the race he drove the car with one hand and had one hand on his head because he just physically couldn't hold his head up. So after a 500-mile race, like I would think that your body would probably be pretty sore, especially back then, right? Like just your neck
back
muscles
then. But the small tracks were worse than the big tracks. Place like Indianapolis, it's 500 miles, but you got those long straightaways to set back and let your neck relax. Really hard places was like Phoenix and Phoenix, any of those small ovals where you're in the corner almost 90% of the time. Very little straightaways, and that's where I always had a bigger problem. First time I realized it in 78, running or 77 at Phoenix, and we were running second, and I couldn't keep my head up. And they finally put a bunch of shop towels together in one of the pit stops and crammed it under my neck, under my helmet to hold my head up. So it was the first time I ever experienced anything like that. And it's not fun when you're driving around here and your head's laying sideways, laying on your shoulder. You're looking at things crossways, So it's.
The helmet Aaron was using is so far advanced from what you were using.
Oh yeah,
weight wise,
it's unbelievable.
Weight wise, if you could have worn a helmet that light,
oh yeah, it wouldn't have been no problem at all. But I do that. It shocks me, like I told you, my grandson, I got him a quarter midget, so I could buy him a helmet. And that helmet's like, it's like a baseball batting helmet. I mean, it weighs nothing. It's
Right.
it almost you set it on the table. I expect it to float off and go towards the car or something. But it's unbelievable the difference from my first helmet, that I had back in '71. Weight wise, I bet that thing weighed 20 pounds. I mean, it feels like it when you pick it up. I don't know. I've never weighed them, but the difference in helmets is unbelievable.
Did you wear a Premier? Is that what you wore?
Yeah, Premier
That's
my
what I thought.
first year.
Yeah, you had Premiers, and then did you ever have a Bell, or did you go right to Simpson when Bill brought
No,
those out?
I started with Premier, and then I went to Bell. I wore Bell for 2 years, and then I went to Simpsons after that. And then 1 year I switched back to Bell for a year, and then I went back, kind of upset Simpson, so I went back to Simpson again. Bill would be a little.
Bill, I thought Bill's one of the most even-tempered human beings I ever met.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, it all depends. If you talk to him at noon, yeah, he's pretty even-tempered. If you talk to him at 10 o'clock at night, nah, he's a little on the vicious side. So anyhow, we had a meeting of the minds. I went back and wore Simpsons after that.
He could get on people. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. He was a good guy. I mean, he did great things for racing people.
He did,
and the racers. The safety aspect. It's phenomenal what he pulled off. And
well, he forced all these companies to get better, and that's the
Right.
technologies you see today. He created the competition amongst the companies to where we got to where we are today. And I wouldn't tell you the first carbon fiber helmet made was Simpson, but the first one I ever saw was the Simpson Sharks and that sort of thing. And it started a revolution again.
Right.
His other helmets were, his other stuff that he come out with in the 80s and that sort of thing. I mean, they really revolutionized the sport. He was a racer at heart. I mean, people can say whatever they want about Bill Simpson, but he always looked for the edge.
Right, he did. And I tell you what, whatever helmet you want to call it, the one I wore in '79 and '80 and '81, we always call it the Darth Vader helmet.
Yeah,
that was the most comfortable, and I love that helmet. But it was, it wasn't real light, but it wasn't as heavy as my very first helmet either. So, but it was a very, very comfortable helmet. Simpson made a good one there.
Yeah, Bill had one. He got stolen somewhere, but he had one of those. He loved it.
Yeah, it was they were good helmets.
I tell you what, riding in the backseat of the two-seater, I thought I was going to lose my helmet a couple times, just the wind coming up, and I guess that's happened before. I heard a story once that's happened to someone in the two-seater. They lost their helmet.
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, that used to be a big thing in the middle '70s. That the air trying to suck your helmet off your head. We fought that a lot of different times with different drivers with Dad's cars, and I fought it a couple races. It's just the way to move. You got to, lower the pressure inside the cockpit because it'll want to pull your helmet off. That's a weird feeling going down the straightaway.
I imagine. Your vision gets a little blurry when that gets up to a certain point, don't it?
Yeah, right. While you bring up one hand, you start pushing it down. It's tough. It's but the old days, that's the way they were.
If people only knew what some of the stuff drivers had to go through, even to this day, there's stuff. Every driver has to do something during the race you would never guess.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Always something strange going on, weird. And I'm sure it's not any different today than it was in the past. Everybody's always trying something to give them an advantage. So, it's like I could never keep a tear off on to save my life. So I just quit using tear offs altogether. If I put on 2 or 3, I always grabbed the wrong tab and had them all flip off on the first pull. So.
That's funny. I know when Bill first started using those racing optics, so racing optics you actually see their products today on the Indy cars. That's what they use for the windshields.
Right.
It's a laminated tear-off system. I assume that's how they do it still on the Indy car, but in for midgets or sprint cars, even Indy car guys, they laminate them together because the old tear-offs, when you stack them on one at a time, you get a little mirror effect, wouldn't you? You get to look at yourself a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, it did some strange things. I never cared for tear-offs much. I always would rather put a rag down in between on my leg, between the seat and my leg, and I'd use that and wipe it off, or use my glove to wipe my shield off.
Right.
Because tear-offs are just the vision change, like you said, when you stacked so many on there, you gotta I don't know what you would call it, like you called it a mirror effect, I guess. And
and also in the lighting, the lights would create havoc. You'd see, the lights would be all over the place, and that's only with like 6 or 7 or 8.
Right.
Whereas now with the laminated system, you can stack like 25 on there and you don't have any vision problems at all.
Really?
Yeah,
nice.
but with them being laminated together, though, if you ain't careful, if you don't put them on right, you'll rip an entire stack off at one time.
Well, sure, that's what I used to do with the old ones. But
right,
we got to remember what's your first one. Is it right or is it left?
Right.
And it was too much trouble. So I just went to just wiping and clean. Hell with it.
That's so funny.
How many helmets did you typically have back then? Was it just one you used a year or multiple years, or?
You'd always have one and a backup helmet. Every year I got 2 helmets to start the season out.
So not like Jimmy Johnson, where you have a helmet for every practice session.
No.
The amount of helmet swaps you did last year was insane. It was at least 30. It seemed like 30 of them. It's geez, how many helmets does the guy have?
Well, I felt fortunate to get 2 helmets every year.
I bet. Yeah.
Well,
my question
when you're
my
running
real question
cars, you just used them forever until they just cracked or they fell apart.
Right. My real question is on Jimmy Johnson's helmets. Is the ones you see him exchange after the race? A lot of times they've probably still got the mics in them.
Yeah.
That's something people don't think about. Is you got an expensive microphone system in there that you have to put in every helmet as well.
Right. Yeah, the electronics they put in them nowadays is probably pretty good.
Yeah.
It's better than the old earpieces we used to run and stuff like that.
I'm sure.
It's just picking up the water trucks, going down the back straightaway. And it's a better system today than it used to be. But even then, we had to strip out the radios. So
I'm surprised you were able to pick up anything with those old radios.
Well, we couldn't. The water trucks you always picked up. I told you that story about out of Ontario going down the back straightaway. And, those days, the rule was they only talk to you when they could see you, or they didn't. They wouldn't talk to you as you're going in a corner or where your focus was high. But I was going down the back straightaway at Ontario, and just as clear as the guy was sitting beside me, I heard the mic click on, and I heard, "Jose, bring the water truck over here." So we picked up somebody in some of the orchards, or I don't know, concrete guy or something.
That
was it. I just reached up and unplugged it and went on. That was just, those things never worked back in those days.
No. You see everybody with giant antennas. They'd have those giant antennas that set out, and it still wouldn't work. And
still would. One of those mags created so much electrical
interference.
Interference, thank you. Created so much interference you couldn't overcome it. Everybody's making special boxes and all that.
So Aaron, a magneto, like what they all ran back then, everybody uses electronic ignition today, and they're in sealed units and all that. So back then you would run a magneto, and it's creating a ton of spark.
Oh, yeah.
And it's pretty uncontrolled. You have the rotor and cap, but it's a pretty uncontrolled thing. I mean, it's not sparking outside the box, but it's creating a lot of electrical interference. And I know when I spotted Bill in the Silver Crown car, when you would use a magneto, when you were under a load, you couldn't hardly hear anything. I mean,
No, it's
all
just
you'd hear was the motor, or the box, and the electronics.
right. No, those mags, they put out so much power, so much spark. It's like you said, it was just so much interference. They weren't very good. They weren't worth the weight carrying them around the racetrack.
Right.
But everybody just thought we had to have them. So
That's because people had important things they needed to tell you.
you're right. Yeah, you know that.
Yep.
So
Well, you have anything else, Scott? I think
Not
we
really. So,
recapped the
so
race
Spike,
pretty
what
well.
was like your real takeaway from this year's 500?
I don't really have a real takeaway. That was just it. I was at the end of the race, and I hate saying this, but I was kind of disappointed in the race. I didn't see anything of real excitement.
Right.
It just went on and on. I just kept waiting for something to really develop, and it just never did. It was the same old race. No matter who was leading, second place was 3 car lengths behind. Third was 3 car lengths behind him. Fourth was 3 behind, and so on through the whole field. And it never changed. And even the red flag didn't make it. I mean, yeah, those last 2 laps, the beginning of it, but you could see the handwriting on the wall whenever Ericsson came out of 1 in the lead. There's no way Potter Ward was going to catch him after that point.
Right.
He had 1 shot. You had to get him in 1, and that was it. So I guess my takeaway is I was disappointed, all in all, in the race itself. On one hand, it was the 500, and it's always exciting. There's always that exciting point. But when you look at it as an actual race, I was disappointed.
Not a lot of dueling right now. The way the aerodynamics package is worked out at this point in time, it's hard to duel. It's hard to suck up. It's hard for 2 or 3 cars to really get in there and fight together. The
last 3 or 4 years, their formula was pretty good. There was some good on-track racing going on. But this year, I was let down this year with that. Yeah, there's an aerodynamic package, or there's some package they've got to change. You get where guys can get up and can battle.
Right. It's crazy, Aaron, and you probably test this maybe more than me. As much as I hated the body work with like what I call fenders, that it almost created almost artificial racing because you sucked up so easy.
Right.
Then it's almost not fair to the leader.
Well, yeah, to a point, I guess. But it's on Sunday's race, they couldn't even get the nose. They couldn't get the nose up under the wing. They couldn't they could get within what we always would call like striking distance, but you couldn't get that last little aerodynamic pull to slingshot you by.
Right.
To where you really sucked up under somebody's wing and got the advantage. And I didn't see anybody do that Sunday. So, there's something they need to look at, need to change. Thank God it was a nice, safe race, and, nobody took any bad shunts and all that, but, they got to develop some racing in it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it, as much as I did enjoy it, I agree with you in the fact that it just didn't have the racing like the passes were. You're just going to pull up and drive by right as a corner entry. I only saw 1 pass at the back on the back straight that I saw, and that was Pato, I think, passed for the lead, or maybe he got passed for the lead. I don't remember which. And that was the only time I ever saw anybody really pull out on the back straightaway and make a pass up front.
Yeah, the back straightaway was really wasn't very active.
Right.
You know, it was all going into one was the biggest part. So that tells me that they were getting off of 4 a lot better than they were getting off of 2, which, you know, to a point that makes a little sense, but because the tires get so heated up in 1 and 2, so that makes exit off of 2's, you know, a little sloppy. But, you know, all in all, like I said, you know, I'm glad there wasn't any big shunts, and it was a good, safe race. But I'd like to see a little more battling going on.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, I didn't think I ever seen anyone move around as much as Ericsson did there. I think the term you used, Scott, was like snaking or snake or something.
Well,
I mean, just
so I
blocking
think
the
it was,
air.
so wasn't it Montoya a few years ago kind of brought that in on the back straightaway where you snake down the back straightaway to try to
Right.
break the draft? Like there used to be guys would like move and move, and now they move. And Ericsson was the first person I can remember really doing it on the front straightaway.
Right.
Pagano, I remember Pagano doing it, but I think it was just on the backstretch.
Yeah.
But I'm sure. I mean, guys probably have always. I mean, have guys always done that at Indy, Spike?
No, not really.
Really?
That's something they've been doing the last 10 years or so, or maybe 12. You know, around that era. No, the old days you never snaked. I mean, you got a lot of the old cars wouldn't let you snake. You know, I mean, between the steering racks and everything else you were involved with, it wasn't quite the same.
Aaron has no idea how incredible it is that he went out and ran 180 mile an hour in that 2-seater,
right,
with such ease, and how
right.
hard you guys had to work to run 180.
Oh, hey, I know how incredible it was.
You understand that 180 mile an hour, I only qualified 181 in 76, my first year.
Yeah.
Right.
And believe me, I was holding my breath and hanging it out, and
Never lifted.
Never lifted. And
Yeah,
God,
I would think
it was all we had. And you're out in the second seater looking around eating a hot dog.
Well, hey, you know a funny story. Actually, someone who went in the 2-seater before me actually broke a world record for playing an accordion.
Well, there you go.
Videos on YouTube. This guy was playing an accordion. Like, I don't know what the record is. Like fastest playing the accordion, or I don't know, at 200 mile an hour. But yeah, I mean, if you're eating a hot dog, you can play an accordion too, I guess.
Well, I tell you what, you go in that 72 McLaren, and you tell me about playing an accordion running 180 mile an hour.
Yeah, I would think Mario's probably a little more comfortable in that 2-seater than probably you were in that car.
I believe so.
And I would imagine the downforce they have in those 2-seaters, it's probably pretty well glued. Dude, I was just surprised how quick. Like, the most surprising thing to me was how quick we took off and how fast he was going in the warm-up lane, like in the actual pit lane. Just the first turn there, because for a second I had to look up and I thought we were actually up on the banking at that point, but we were still on flat ground on the whatever you call it, the pit warm-up lane or whatever.
Right.
And just how fast. And I think that's just because it's my first time ever in a car with that much downforce, but it just really surprised me how quick we were going just on the flat ground like that.
So did you get the opportunity did you feel it suck down? Did you feel it pull you down to the racetrack? Can you feel that in a 2-seater?
I don't know if I really know what you're talking about. So I might have, but I don't know. I mean, that would be just
in a regular ground effects car. I mean, you could feel the car as you're going down the straightaway. Actually, when you're accelerating and you're going up through the ground effects, when you would get up around 190, 200 mile an hour, you could actually feel the car suck down and pull itself down. Did you get any of that? You didn't?
No, I didn't. And I might have. I didn't really pay attention. But I mean, probably the closest was just, like I said, going out and just in the pit lane, just how much the car just felt like it was glued to the ground and how fast we were going. It just felt like it was on rails. And that's, because of it being downforce. but we were joking about it, but I think the most real part of it was just being in the car, like almost feels like you're in a roller coaster. It's like a ride. You feel like you're in a ride at Disney, but it's 10 times better. But then you look in front of you and you see Mario's helmet and you realize Mario Andretti's driving you. It's pretty insane.
Sure. I bet it is. I bet it's a pretty neat experience. So. Yeah. I'm glad you got to do it. Give you an idea what it was like.
It did. A very small idea. I just remember like just accelerating on the backstretch and I was like, man, I can't believe people are actually out here racing doing this. That was my first thought. Like, this is insane. So I got
50 mile an hour faster too.
Yeah. And I definitely got to give guys like you, Spike, a lot of credit, and because it's pretty amazing, especially back when you guys raced. But then again, like you didn't know any better back then. It was the safest car there was. Yeah, because we've asked guys like and Christian Fittipaldi, we were talking to him about this, like back then when you were driving those cars in the 90s, like the big thing was foot injuries, because how close up your feet were to the front of the wheels. And he was like, well, he said the same thing. Like we didn't know any different because that was the safest car. And 20 years from now, people will say that about the cars from now, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
And now people say like, how'd you drive a car without an aero screen? I mean, that's the thing people say now.
Right. No, it changes. It gets safer. I mean, it's development. And but you'd enjoyed the old cars. Heck, they used to skate around so much and move around, and you'd really give you that racing aspect,
Well, I think someone needs to bring back the car you were just talking about and make it a two-seater. And then Spike can do his own two-seater experiences in that car.
Yeah, right. That's what they need, is a flat bottom two-seater.
You're practicing for it now with your two-seater go-kart. So that's
well,
perfect.
There you go. There you go. But I wouldn't, I wouldn't recommend it.
The craziest two-seater I ever saw in my life was actually a three-seater. You know what? I'm going to take that back. It could have been a two-seater, and I assumed it was a three-seater. It was a sprint car at Terre Haute, and they had a seat in the right side Nerf bar.
Yeah, but nobody was sitting in it.
No, people were going out.
Really? In the right side Nerf bar?
Right side Nerf bar. There is no way I would ever do that in my life.
And they were actually giving rides in that thing?
They were giving rides in that thing. Bill saw it.
Oh.
Bill can attest to it. He saw it.
I got to talk to Willie about that.
Oh, it was insane. There's no way.
Who was driving it?
I don't even know. I never even saw the car before in my life. It was just, we were there for, I think, a midget race, and they were going out beforehand with this sprint car and giving these two-seater rides, whatever you want to call them, and had a Kirky seat mounted in the right side Nerf bar. No way.
No way.
No way.
Well, I tell you, when I first started running champ cars, old Clint Bronner came up to me and said, hey, you know what? I said, what? He says, I'd like to ride with you around. We were at Michigan running 180 mile an hour. He says, I'd like to put a cone over the side pod of your car and ride on the side pod while you go around here. I said, what? He said, yeah, I'd like to, so I can see what the suspension's is doing and what all the things are happening. I said, Bronner, you're out of your mind. But I don't know if he was serious or not, that just brought that to something like that.
It's so funny.
He wanted to lay on the side pod of the Kingfish and go around Michigan with.
I never met Clint, so I don't know. I don't know how eccentric he was, but there's some guys that would do that.
Yeah, there's, to find out what they wanted to find out, they would go to extremes.
Well, look at that car. Look at that car Smokey brought to the Speedway with that basically a sidecar on it.
Yeah. That's, thank God that didn't catch on.
Oh,
I mean that had to be spooky. That was spooky just looking at it.
Yeah, I can imagine. I never saw it in person, but yeah, I can imagine.
Oh man, that had to be something to drive. Poncho's dad drove that. Dwayne Carter drove that thing.
Did he really? I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah. And I don't know. It had about 4 or 5 different guys running it. But thank God it never caught on.
Hey, when you see that first turbine without bodywork on it,
Oh, yeah.
terrifying. Terrifying to look at.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. But it was such a neat race car, but it was terrifying.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Spike, thank
right.
you as always. I will be seeing you soon, hopefully.
Yeah.
And I wish you all the best.
Yeah. You too, guys. I appreciate the invite. It's been nice talking. I know we didn't talk a whole lot about the race, but some. But anyhow, it's been enjoyable. Y'all take care. Have a good one.
You
All right,
too,
thanks,
buddy.
Spike.